Hello and welcome to Industry Spotlight with Creative First. Our guest for today is Executive Director of the Alternative Group at Alt.vfx, Tyrone Estephan. Tyrone, welcome to this discussion.
Hi, great to be talking to you.
You've worked across advertising, film, and broadcast. What first drew you into visual storytelling?
I guess I've always been into storytelling even as early as being a child. I think storytelling has been my first great sort of passion. Um, Even as a child, like my mum sometimes brings out books that I was writing as a child. You know what I mean? Like, and they're quite comprehensive stories that I was writing as a child. So I've always been interested in it. And then as I got older, I sort of entered the music field. And then as I got a little bit older and, got more life experience and I was working in a lot of different industries and getting a lot of life experience, shall we say, I started meeting a lot of people at different events that I liked. And every time I asked them, what do you do? They all seem to be in either visual effects or filmmaking. And the more I met these people, the more I thought I'm one of these people, and I need to get myself into that. Whatever, do you know what I mean? So, there is an economy thing there too, where it is an industry where you can get paid to be creative. And so for me, I have a storytelling creative spirit, but if you want to write a novel or if you want to be a musician, it's harder to make a living out of it. But in filmmaking, there is a whole industry there, global industry that you can feed into, get a job, get experience, work your way up. So that's kind of how I found myself eventually, basically walking into a company one day with all the experience I had, which was, transferable skills, let's say, and saying to them, here are my skills, but I need to be in this building. This is where I should be. And I got some great advice once from a friend of mine that was a little bit older. You could say a mentor, and was quite successful in what he did. And the advice he gave me was just to keep pushing in the direction you want to go, and eventually you'll find yourself there. And I think I took that advice, and that's how I found myself in this industry and telling stories in this medium. By over a few years there, I started pushing myself in this direction until I found a home.
You've been part of studios like Animal Logic, Method Studios, and now Alt.vfx. How has your approach to production evolved over time?
Um, Look, because I came in to the industry the way I just mentioned, I guess in my mind, I guess I've been a little bit of a renegade in the industry. So like, it's not like I came into the industry at a very young age and then just kind of got told how to do it. I didn't go to film school, for instance. And so I came with no preconceptions of how it should happen. Um, and so in many ways I was disruptive, I guess. And disruptive is a word that, is used now, but I think when I came in, it was probably a couple of years before people started using that word. And I was definitely one of those people. But in saying that, like I worked at, like say Animal Logic, as you mentioned, who no longer exists. Animal Logic now, for all intents and purposes, called Netflix in Australia, Netflix Animation. But the legacy of Animal Logic is huge here in Australia for visual effects. It was such a big company, and run by such talented people, that anyone who, like most people who went through that company, did get an education, and like a very deep instilled education on how to do visual effects, how to do animation. And it was kind of permeated through the entire culture of the company. And even now, when you meet those people years later, although that company doesn't necessarily exist anymore, we're all like-minded and we all work the same way. And I've gone into different visual effects studios over the years, and I think I've taken that culture with me. So that was given to me by that company, and for pretty much anyone who worked there for a good period of time. And so then you sort of go and you go forth and spread the word almost to the other companies. And that culture is like a very hardworking craft, kind of never satisfied mindset of just really striving for excellence, which is something that you kind of learn how to grit yourself through those things. And I've come into other companies where the culture, not that it might be necessarily bad, but it's just different, different cultures for different companies. And I think anywhere I've gone, I've taken that with me and then kind of brought that in a little bit as well. But I've also brought in a little bit of that renegade as well. So for me, it's always been I've always been like, what's the next creative possibility? How can we disrupt this? And very much this is possible, where I'm definitely a yes person. So often I'll be like I often say, look, no script or budget ever comes in correct. Do you know what I mean? And so it's very easy for people to say that's not possible, or you can't do that, but I think, particularly as a producer, I think fundamentally that is your job, is to say, yes, I will work out how to do this and what is the version of this that I can do and can make, and how will we do it? And that takes creativity, takes a lot of creativity and a culture. And I think really that's kind of how I've been doing it. So every place I've gone, I've kind of like evolved that part of the business and of myself as I've gone along.
Adding to that, how do you bring, design, technology, and storytelling together?
Well, I think that's kind of where I found myself in that space for sure. So as I was doing the renegade thing and learning craft and to create award-winning high caliber work, I also was looking for a place where I can tell my stories and push my creativity beyond the creativity of producing something. And, I would say 15, 16 years ago, which isn't that long ago, but in terms of technology, I mean, it's just a different planet, to be honest with you. And so back then, I could see the very starts of kind of technology and emerging tech. Because and so like in terms of just emerging tech, so prior to that, I think you had companies like ILM who were pioneering, and really how visual effects got formed was, we need to make Star Wars. How do you do that? And so people solving those things. But a lot of those solutions were practical, and then like computers. But 15 years ago, there were new techs like VR, and then augmented reality, and then gamification, and all the way up to now with AI. So I saw an opportunity there for me to kind of get into that. In fact, be one of the first people into that world and learn it, and sort of have it as something I can do that not everyone's doing. And to be fair, in a strange way, a lot of people in my industry at that time were not interested in, partly because our industry kind of, although at essence is all about exploring new possibilities and technology, I think it built so big that people became a modeler or an animator or a lighter or a compositor, and that's their craft. To get good at it, it takes a lot of craft and a lot of experience and a lot of years. And so that's who they are. And they don't want to be anything else besides that, because that's really their zone. And I totally respect that. But it actually took me a long time to even work out that that's what was happening. Because when I started, I was thinking, why is everyone not just getting into this? Do you know what I mean? Because, I'm working with people who are so talented, like, and trying to get them on board that sort of that hype train. But I think it didn't work out that way. And so really, that's kind of like where I found myself, and I've always loved design. I've always loved art. So I've never been sort of one dimensional in what I like, and so I've always looked at what creative possibilities are out there. And what I ended up finding is I applied for some tenders for some unusual jobs. Wrote some scripts myself, which is what I've always wanted to do since I was a child. Won those tenders, then built teams, and used my production skills to build teams to make those projects. Literally calling people from other companies saying, "Hey, I see that you're working in VR, and there's only 3 people I know that have done anything like this at the moment. Would you like to come and work with me on this project? Because it's is a fantastic project." So I kind of got into that and did all of that stuff, and then it's just been building on it, year on year. 15 years later, Do you know what I mean? The world is completely different. The things that I've spoken about for 15 years where people like don't know what that is, kind of everyone knows what it is now. So the landscape's changed a lot. And, we just look for more shifting creative possibilities, always trying to shift into the next sort of thing.
You recently spoke at the MPA FICCI official satellite event of the India AI Impact Summit. What is your opinion about AI as a tool and not the creator?
Um, well, it's the never-ending conversation that everyone's talking about these days. I guess like knowing that whole history that I just spoke about, AI is just the next thing in the journey of the technology company Tada, which we've set up as a subsidiary of Alt.vfx that I head up. Um, and it is a little bit different though. I think as we've gone through all of the different technologies, they've sort of all come and gone a little bit. They're all still there, but you know, um, I guess their purpose, their real world purpose, has kind of like waned, I guess, a little bit. So, but with AI, it feels a little bit more like it's here to stay and has, it's like it's a little bit more like the internet, where it's like people are, this is not going away anytime fast. In terms of the way we're really using it and having the biggest impact for us is actually a little bit more on the back end of things, like pipelines and the developer tools, developing systems and stuff and automating things definitely have restructured a lot of the way our business works. In terms of creativity, that one's a very interesting one for us because I've been working pretty heavily in the AI space with my team since kind of COVID days, which I think, is probably as early as anyone has been working on it. So I've been hanging in there for a long time. And when we started working in it, no one was really doing much. In fact, the first ad ever done in Australia and Japan, we created, which had AI. But both those times especially the Australian one, I told everyone, don't under any circumstances tell anyone there's AI.
Why is that?
Well, it was like 4 years ago or something. And I think if 4 years ago, definitely in Australia, if you said to someone there's AI in this, they didn't really know what that meant because now everyone knows what it means. But back then, just around COVID, no one really would have known what that meant. And it definitely wasn't a good word. Do you know what I mean? It was some, fear and uncertainty kind of comes with it. So, the whole thing wasn't AI. We used it as a tool. We, like in that particular shot, we had to go into someone's eyeball and they didn't have budget and created kind of things and gave it to a compositor and we put it all together. And no one and no one knew. And we're still kind of in that zone. Like now that everyone is doing AI, you see it everywhere. And interestingly, now that everyone's doing it, we're probably less front facing saying, look at what we've done with AI, because the stuff we're doing is kind of not trying to wow people with how much AI we've done and more like, oh, we need to do a grass simulation for this shot and we don't have time or budget for it. So we'll use AI, but no one really will ever pick up on that's what we did. So we're doing a lot of that in our pipeline, especially for long form and film work and television work. But then on the flip side of that, and especially in the advertising world, where people are looking for ideas, and what Tadar is very much an ideas factory. And with the creative team I work with, we have clients and agencies coming to us regularly asking to collaborate with us on ideas and create creative possibilities. And that's where we're very interested in AI. And that is kind of looking for what hasn't been done yet and what can you do with this that no one's thought of yet. And that can be anything. That's kind of vague to say that like that, but we've done things where we've created commercials where there's some form of hyper personalization in the ad where people are watching content but they're starring in the content, whether it's style and that content might be stylized or trained on a model that our designers and our illustrators have created. Or we've done like outdoor activations at events that are extensions of some film where people are interacting with a with a kiosk or something where it's giving them content, but it's all AI driven or yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to even be visual. It could be just the brain behind a puppet that's talking to you that, as it's talking to you, it's learning about you and it feels very real and authentic. So there's so many ideas that you can do, and we're very interested in all of that sort of stuff and seeing what you can do with it. Yeah.
So adding to what you said, I think AI, you would agree, is actually just a transformative process, but the creativity always remains. With that in mind, you've always spoken about AI generated content lacking craft
hmm
because of the growing concern around the authenticity. How do we maintain that?
Yeah. Well, that is an easy question for me to answer. Because we've been doing it for so long, we know how much craft it takes to make it work. And so people get wet. Like there are two parts definitely of my brain and most people's brains, but for someone who is optimistic and into it, into creative possibilities and into what AI can do, I will see something and be wowed by the technology. And like, wow, like, did you see that new thing that came out this week? But the other part of my brain is like, it's not as production ready as everyone thinks it is. And it's hard to separate those two things sometimes because sometimes you might see something that actually seems like it's production ready, but it really is just 5 seconds of something. Do you know what I mean? And actually, if you interrogate it more with that kind of high level craft background that I have, it can fall apart very quickly. So a few years back, and we still do this from time to time. We try to create AI content with craft to a production ready ability. And we actually a couple of years ago, maybe it was a year ago or 2 years ago, we took a commercial that we made, which was a Cannes Lion winning commercial, and we started creating it frame for frame exactly the same using AI to an extent where no one would be able to notice the difference. And we did that. There was actually kind of no reason to do it besides, can you do it? We just wanted to see, can you actually do it? And the more we worked on it, the more we found out two things. One, yeah, we can do it. And no, we don't want to do it because it's too much work and we don't have time to keep doing this. Do you know what I mean? It's actually a lot of craft needs to go into it to get that content. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is I think the reason you're not seeing the craft is that AI has made creativity accessible to everyone. And so everyone's creating it, but everyone doesn't understand craft. Not everyone's gone and worked at Animal Logic for like 10 years and learnt the meaning of how to do craft. Do you know what I mean? And so, but I don't think everyone's worked that out yet. And so I'm constantly seeing content and everyone's going, great, it's great. And I think and the more people do it, it's almost like the less we do it because it's almost like I'm sitting back just waiting for the moment where someone actually needs it to be of a certain standard and then willing to, I guess, pay the budget to do that. And then we can step in and do that because it's not a prompt that will get you the craft. And people, I think, keep thinking it will be eventually, like maybe in 6 weeks or maybe in a year, you'll write a prompt and it'll be perfect. And I just don't believe that. I believe that craft is always there. And if you don't apply it, it'll never be as good as it can be. And so I, it's hard to explain, but for me, creative possibility is always like creative possibility. And so if you apply time and craft to it, you get to the possibility. But if you don't, because it's just giving it to you, you kind of fall short. And I think what's happening now is people are falling short. And that's why people talk about AI slop. And that's why people, the public who are actually not creators are on the most part, I would say, are adverse to AI creations. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think and I think what it is like most people think that people don't like AI because it's the bad robot coming to take over the world. But I actually think it's more that subconsciously people do know the difference between good and bad, uncanny and real. Um, and unless you give them something that's proper good, they don't really care if it's AI or not. They're just like, that's bad. or I don't like that, or that's evil, or why, do you know what I mean? And so the battle is there. And I know that for us, we're doing both. Like, we get asked to do budget, fast, find solutions. And we've built software that does it for social ads and pump out 1,000 social ads in a day with a click of a button. And we try to maintain some craft to it. But then on the flip side, I get people calling up and saying, can we do it in AI? And I'm like, not if you want it to be the best it can be. Or I can do it in AI. And that's interesting because it's a dragon flying into an eyeball in a different universe. And, we can't film that. But, maybe it's going to take less people to do it now, but it's probably going to take the exact same amount of time. Do you mean? So where it took 12 weeks or 6 months, it's still probably going to take 12 weeks or 6 months, but maybe not 12 people, maybe 6 people. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, long answer, but that's kind of what I think.
No, I think it's perfect. And adding to what you said, I just wanted to understand. So, for the creators in India, how do you think that they can best be equipped to be future ready with,
Um,
technology like AI and,
well,
the
I'm
future
seeing I'm
of
seeing
AI?
I'm seeing great work coming out of India. I've especially after traveling there and meeting some people. I've stayed in touch with some people that I met when I was there, and the work is of a great standard. Like it's comparable to what I'm seeing elsewhere. But in saying that, also I'm not really seeing much proper quality anywhere. Do you know what I mean? And so I think India's punching pretty high above its, like it's getting there, but I think I think it's almost like less is more. Do you know what I mean? Like if I was, and I'm looking to collaborate with some Indian studios, and I'm looking for the right project. And I guess the dots I'm waiting to connect in my mind is I'm waiting for the right project where I can leverage the talent that I've met in India, but then almost guide them with my experience and my team's experience of that kind of the last 5%. In visual effects, we always talk about the last 5% being the hardest. And it's something that you only experience teaches you. You can't just know it or do it. Do you know what I mean? You've got to be in a room with people who understand, and they're interrogating your work and pushing you to the point of breakdown. And that's when you go, oh, that's the thing. Do you know what I mean? If you're lucky. Sometimes you don't even get there, to be honest with you. But then you go, oh yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing where no one even cares it's AI anymore. It's just a cool dragon going through an eyeball. That's fantastic. Do you know what I mean? And part of that also is not just relying solely on one skill set or one tool. Do you know what I mean? It's actually using all the things that you can do to bring it together, which is actually what interests me.
In addition to, of course, collaborating with, amazing people like yourself and cross-pollination of ideas.
I
Finally,
think
Tyrone,
so.
what excites you most about the future of visual storytelling?
Um, well, I think it. I, th- I think, I think the bubble is going to burst a little bit with this AI thing. I don't mean financially, or I don't mean it's going away, but I think people are now on a bit of a hype train and kind of, which is a good thing. I think that's how everyone's going to learn a little bit more about how to use it and what it is. And I know that directors are using it a lot. Do you know what I mean? But I think that collaboration is where the future lands. And I don't think anyone's really truly collaborating yet in AI. I've actually never thought that. I think as I'm answering the question, I'm realizing but I think, and I've seen that with every technology, to be honest with you. As technologies come out, it's a gold rush. People see a new tech and they go, oh, this is the thing that's going to make me rich. And they start their, AI company and off we go. And I know that's a cynical thing to say, but it's kind of what happens, the VR companies, then the AR companies, and now I'm seeing the AI companies. But I think eventually that bubble bursts, and then it's like, oh, we all have to work together to make the thing. And there's a reason why there's thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people on a credit list at the end of the movie. Do you know what I mean? And, at the moment, when you see an AI film, there's not that many people on a credit list. It's usually like two people. Do you know what I mean? And so there's a clue in that. Do you know what I mean? So I think I'm excited for that. And I'm always excited for the next generation of people coming through as well. I think they're less probably into the hype train. I find that, when I go to AI festivals and film festivals and stuff, it's interesting. I look around and it's actually a pretty old crowd. It's old directors, it's retired directors who are probably not getting as much work. So this is a place where they can keep being creative. And whereas young people, they're not really thinking in terms of tools and money. Do you know what I mean? They're thinking in terms of story and rebelling. And so I think when those two things meet, that's where I'm excited for.
Thank you so much, Tyrone, for this insightful conversation about
My pleasure.
technology as an enabler and not a replacement to the creative process of storytelling.
Of course. Exactly. Appreciate your time.